What is the rarest thing you have ever come across in your life? Serious. I saw two blind men walk into each other in the street, apologize and carry on, without realizing the other was blind. Slightly related, I saw two people in wheelchairs do the awkward go left, go right, try to go around each other but both accidentally go the same way dance on a crowded street once, in wheelchairs. It was funnier knowing that they're both accustomed to people making room for them on the sidewalk. We moved around a lot as a kid. My sisters and I went to an elementary public school, and then a Catholic school for a few years, then moved about 300 miles away and went to public schools for the rest of our school ages. I always remember this girl with glasses who wore her hair in a bun no matter what school we were in. I just always thought a girl that looked like this existed in school. When I was about 21 or 22, I was in a university film class in San Marcos, Texas, and I get to talking to my group partner. Turns out she was the girl I remembered. She went first to my public elementary school, then to my private Catholic school, then moved 300 miles away and attended the same elementary, middle, and high school, and was now in my class in college. As in the old Aztec legend, I once actually saw an eagle, snake in its talons, land on a cactus. Immediately I thought, yes, I must build my empire here. I used to live in a student city where a lot of bikes get stolen. When I was 16, my bike was stolen, and when I was 19, another bike was stolen. Because my father was pee about it, I was constantly on the lookout for my bike. Lo and behold, 4 months later, I spotted my bike in the city, near the train station. It had someone else's lock attached to it. Called the police and waited. They showed up fairly quickly, confirmed from the police report that it was indeed my bike, and cut open the lock. I had my bike back. Yay. Now with bike in hand, I keep walking. Not 100 meters further, I spot the bike that got stolen several years ago. Same procedure. Call the police. They return. They're a bit suspicious, but due to the unique characteristics on the bike that I described in the police report after it got stolen, a crack in a certain place, tires different brands, etc., they have to admit that this too is my stolen bike. They cut open another lock and I walk home with my two bikes. Crazy. Wonder if the two thieves called the cops too. A coin from the reign of Heraclius, Emperor of Byzantium, 610-641/2 AD. It was a fragile little piece of metal so rusted it appeared black. Every time I held it, I had the overwhelming urge to snap it in half for some reason, so I moved it on quickly. I brought my kayak to the Indian River Lagoon in Florida on Memorial Day of 2013. The Iral during the summer months can become bioluminescent. Dinoflagellates in the water glow bright blue-green when disturbed, and last year it was an aquatic lichow. As I was paddling at 2 AM there was a fin that came straight towards my boat and then disappeared underneath me and slapped the bottom of my kayak. That was a shark. But later there was a pod of dolphins that started teaching a baby dolphin how to fish along the shore. These dolphins came within 2 feet of me and I could see them perfectly glowing bluish green in the water. I actually watched the dolphins herd fish, and with every paddle of their tail the water exploded like lightning. They hung around and fished for hours as I marveled. It was a natural phenomena that I don't know if I'll ever witness again, but it was certainly the most rare and beautiful thing I've ever experienced in my entire life. I have one of the original great wave prints done by Hokusai. Saw a chunk of rock enter the atmosphere at 3 AM one morning. It came from the south, then about 1/8 across the sky it went bright red and lit everything up in an eerie red. It looked like an incredibly massive firework. A massive pillar of smoke trailed behind it as it was traveling north. It was amazingly loud and broke up into about 10 pieces towards the north side of the sky and faded into nothing. The sound, the brightness, I only wish I shared that moment with someone. No description will ever do it justice. I've commented about this before, but as a kid I interviewed Neil Armstrong as part of a project. He rarely gave interviews, and the only way I was able to do so was because he was friends with my grandfather. He was a really nice guy, and was really willing to help. My mother has an old Coca-Cola glass syrup jug that lists cocaine as an ingredient. While backpacking I got to see several of a bird that, until recently, was thought to be extinct. A friend of mine was showing me pictures of a trip of his to New Zealand, and I was in the background of one of them. This was around 6 years before we even met. Not something I can collect, but definitely something that will probably never happen to me again. This reminds me of that couple that found each other in the background of a childhood picture from Disney World. I saw a sigmoid volvulus, when a portion of a colon twists around itself and starts to die, which is rare to begin with, in a lady that had it for over 6 months. It was necrotic and in a shell of fibrous tissue, and for some reason the dying portion hadn't ruptured thanks to the fibrous shell and was still able to move along stool from the pressures of the unaffected part of the colon. The 70-year-old surgeon that was operating with me says he had never seen or heard of anything like this, and convinced me to do a poster presentation on it. At the conference I presented at, every single surgeon that saw my poster said they have never heard or seen of one before, and some were hesitant to believe me until they saw the pictures. After an extensive 4-month literature search, I couldn't find a single case that came close. Next stop is the Annals of Surgery, which already expressed interest in this case. So technically I've seen something no one else has seen before. I've seen ball lightning. I can only describe it as a camera flash but moving in ball form. It whizzed right by me. I am a coin dealer and collector. I think the lowest vintage coin I have owned was $950. It was a mad-proof Lincoln cent. I have held $300,000 to $500,000 coins. Those are always fun. A fully intact coral horn fossil from the Ordovician era that I found in a stream. Last set of cams from Ferrari factory for 1967 275 GTB4. A perfect and intact ammonite fossil about 5 inches across. My father is big on fossils. This story always makes me happy and I hope it doesn't get buried. A few winters ago, in the aftermath of a super shitty snowstorm, I found a dog, a tiny Chihuahua mix, very nervous and a little aggressive. Seemingly abandoned, I knocked on the door of the house he was in front of. Without even asking any questions, the guy who answered immediately said he wasn't his dog. Balls. I felt bad for him, so me and my ex scooped him up and headed for an animal rescue center nearby. Shout out to Bobby and the strays in Atlas Park Mall. They took him in and that was that. Until about 2 years later, when I see an insanely similar dog in Manhattan. I went up to the owner and asked where she found him. She mentioned how he was found abandoned in Queens and was brought into a shelter for rescue. I told her I was the one who actually found the dog and how glad I was that she opened up her home to him. The craziest twist of fate ever. An original Edison wax cylinder record player, with the speaker cone thing and several wax cylinders as well. We were tearing down an old barn on my grandma's farm property and found it in a tack room, among some other cool old things like school desks and an ice box, which my dad and I restored and turned into a bookcase. I guess I don't know how rare they actually are, but I would assume it's rare to find them in pretty good condition, along with cylinders that aren't cracked or broken. Many years ago, a friend's mother owned one in excellent condition. Said friend decided to pull it apart to see how it worked. Ended up getting tossed. Also had another friend who bought a Model A Ford and cut the top off with a hacksaw to make a convertible. Ran it without oil and seized the engine. Some people have no idea what they've got. I went on a trip to Australia with my parents when I was 13. We took a plane to Alice Springs. We took a camping car. We were heading to Darwin and went to Kings Canyon before going to Uluru and then heading north. After walking 4 hours, we get to a waterhole to swim in. Who do I see? My history teacher. Mind blown. Probably not rare, but as a kid on vacation with family at Yosemite Park, there was a massive cloud of big ass butterflies. We were hiking, then all of a sudden just tons of black and orange butterflies. So many that I couldn't see my hands in front of me. It lasted maybe 20 or 30 seconds. But never again have I ever seen so many butterflies at one time. I always assumed it must have been a yearly breeding thing, but I really don't know. I had this happen once. I was driving home from school, and all of a sudden, thousands of butterflies went flying by. Sadly, we were on the freeway. We were headed west and they were headed south. Wasn't as pretty as much as it was disgusting and sad. Splat, cringe, splat splat splat. I used to go fossil hunting on the Isle of Wight, a well-known place for this sort of thing. I went in this group of people, searching for the fossils, and one of the kids, must have been under 10, went up the cliff a little bit, did some digging, then came back with something. He asked the tour guide what it was, and the guide became speechless. It was an extremely rare fossil, and I remember hearing a news story a couple weeks later saying that it was something that excited archaeologists. I like to think that they named the fossil after the kid. I've seen a dropped penny land perfectly on its edge. Me and my then boyfriend watched a movie called Svina Longorna only to realize we had both been extras in the movie 5 years before we met. We even sat next to each other in the background. I heard my guinea pig singing, and no, not their usual adorable weeking. I thought a bird had gotten into the house and was chirping. After owning GPs off and on for 10 plus years, I'd never heard their song. Apparently it is pretty rare to hear. Double awesome event. As a kid, I used to go to this village where some of my family lived in Greece. It was up in the mountains, and one day I got incredibly bored and decided to go fossil hunting with my father. We were just looking at some rocks at the side of the road when I saw something that actually looked interesting. It was fairly big rock that looked like it had tubes of stone coming out of it. Turns out it was part of an ancient sea animal burrow from the Cambrian. 500 million years ago. We found loads of other things, more burrows, ancient coral, and shells. Just as we were about to leave, we saw another rock in front of us and collected it, and I was nearly bitten by a 10 centimeter long bright orange giant centipede thing. Fantastic. Working on my dissertation at uni, I did paleontology, and while sifting through sediment I'd broken down came across what appears to be a late Jurassic avian tooth. You don't see a lot of those in southern England. An albino male deer, horns and all, standing on a hill. The white stag, beware the wild hunt. I collect vintage Pyrex kitchenware, mostly from the 40s through the 60s. Once, at a church rummage sale, I found a 7 inches square clear glass baking dish with an unusual, primitive Pyrex logo on the bottom for $1. I bought it, and after doing some research, I was able to date it to around 1915. It is approaching its 100th birthday. I love imagining the women who use this throughout the decades. My mom has inherited the cookware of my grandma, who inherited the cookware of her mom. We still use all of it. Pyrex doesn't get used up, but I sometimes think about how many dinners and holidays that stuff has been involved in. I have a small piece of agate, probably used as a seal or on a ring, carved with the symbol of one of the members from the Order of the Garter, but I do not know which member as I have not been able to find any info about it. I have taken it to antiques dealers who say it is likely genuine. The stone itself is worth several hundred or $sign. I believe it was looted during World War II. Today I went to an old engineer's house and got to see a Curter calculator, an Orden bomb sight, an Edison phonograph and Edison light bulb. He also had a few $1 million of machinery in his workshop, including a water jet cutter, CNC mill, CNC, lathe, jig borer, brake press, hydraulic press, laser welder, spot welder, induction heater, and a bunch more things I didn't recognize. My friend has heterochromia and she was born on the 29th of February. I always saw that as a pretty rare and cool combination. When my husband and I were snorkeling on the Barrier Reef, the guide became really excited. He'd noticed that a particular fish was engaged in a mating ritual, and he said that witnessing this was really rare. He was beside himself with excitement. I don't even remember the name of the fish. We saw so many awesome fish that day that the scaly bastards all melded together. Oh, I couldn't think of anything until you said this. When I was very young, my parents took me to a zoo with a white tiger and a normal tiger. My dad has footage somewhere of them beginning to mate. He either realizes what he's recording and quickly stops. I've made fun of him for this a couple times. You have been visited by the doggo beer master. Comment delicious so you always have beer in your life. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.